Another one. Little girl. Everyone wants to claim their parent was some kind of secret hero. My father sold insurance, and he was a hero to me. Stop trying to get attention with these fantasies about your mother being a Navy SEAL. There's no such thing. The words, slick with condescension, echoed in the cavernous training hall at the FBI's Quantico facility. The speaker was Special Agent Davies, a man whose tailored suit seemed a size too small for his ego. He stood with his arms crossed, a smug smirk playing on his lips as he addressed the small, unassuming teenage girl standing before him. A few of the other students on the Future Agents Day tour snickered, their nervous laughter validating Davies' casual cruelty. They looked at the girl, Maya, and saw what Davies saw. Plain brown hair pulled back in a simple tail, a gray hoodie that swallowed her frame, and a posture of such profound stillness it could be mistaken for timidity. She was a ghost in a room full of aspiring titans. The crowd laughed, but Maya did not react. Her face, a placid mask of neutrality, didn't even flicker. Her hands, steady and deliberate, continued their task, meticulously cleaning the lens of an old, manual-focus camera with a microfiber cloth. It was an ancient piece of equipment, a relic in a digital age, much like the quiet discipline she exuded in a world of noise. She folded the cloth with surgical precision, her focus absolute, as if Agent Davies and his audience were nothing more than ambient sound, a passing distraction in a far more important mission. But across the observation deck, looking down through the reinforced glass, an old man in a perfectly pressed suit, Admiral Callahan, leaned forward, his placid demeanor sharpening into a razor's edge. He didn't see a fantasist or an attention-seeking child. He saw a stance, a familiar, unnerving stillness he hadn't seen in 20 years, a centering of gravity that belonged to a place of profound violence and even more profound control. He saw the ghost of a warrior in the frame of a girl. If you believe true strength doesn't need to announce itself, type silence in the comments below. Agent Davies, emboldened by the ripples of laughter and Maya's utter lack of response, decided to press his advantage. He saw her silence not as strength, but as a tacit admission of her lie, and he decided to make it a public lesson in humility and the dangers of stolen valor. "You see, class," he announced, his voice booming with false authority. "This is a classic psychological profile. A desire for significance. A need to invent a narrative because reality is too mundane." He began to pace in front of Maya, a predator circling his prey, though the prey seemed utterly oblivious to his presence. "So, tell us, little storyteller, what was her unit? SEAL Team Unicorn? Did she ride dolphins into battle and fight off rogue squids with a laser beam?" The sarcasm was thick, each word a little barb intended to prick her composure. The other students, caught between the discomfort of the situation and the desire to curry favor with the FBI agent, shuffled their feet. The silence that followed was heavy, complicit. Maya finished with her lens. She screwed it back onto the camera body with a quiet, satisfying click. Her eyes, which had been downcast in concentration, lifted, but they did not meet Davies. Instead, they scanned the room, not with fear or defiance, but with a cool, analytical detachment. She seemed to be measuring distances, noting exits, assessing the structural integrity of the viewing platform. It was a sweep, professional, and instantaneous. On her wrist, a simple, dark blue braided cord, barely visible under the cuff of her hoodie, seemed to tighten ever so slightly as her hand rested on her camera. To Davies, it was a cheap trinket. To Admiral Callahan, watching from above, it was a jolt of electricity. It was a mourning braid, a cord woven from the uniform threads of a fallen teammate, a sacred relic in the silent brotherhood he knew so well. Davies saw a child playing make-believe. Callahan was beginning to suspect he was looking at the last living piece of a legend. The day's itinerary culminated in a demonstration within the facility's advanced kill house, a labyrinth of configurable rooms and corridors designed for hostage rescue simulations. The students were safely behind a ballistic glass wall, watching a team of seasoned HRT operators prepare to run a complex scenario. Agent Davies was narrating, his voice once again full of practiced confidence, explaining the tactical intricacies of the dynamic entry. The scenario involved a high-value hostage, a time-sensitive bomb, and a series of interlocking electronic locks that had to be bypassed in a precise sequence. It was a symphony of controlled chaos. But then, something went wrong. A sharp cry, not from the simulation, but from the control booth. The lead scenario controller, the man orchestrating the entire exercise, suddenly slumped over his console, his face pale, his hand clutching his chest. Alarms, real ones this time, blared through the hall. The simulation froze. The lights in the kill house flickered and switched to a harsh, emergency red. The electronic locks, which were supposed to disengage, instead defaulted to a hard lockdown. The HRT team was trapped in the entry corridor, and the countdown clock on the simulated bomb began to accelerate erratically. Panic, a subtle but venomous thing, began to creep into the professional calm of the room. Davies, his face flushed, barked orders into his radio. But he was a bureaucrat, not a field operator. His commands were hesitant, confused. He was out of his depth, and the structured demonstration was spiraling into a genuine crisis, risking embarrassment in front of the admiral and, worse, potential injury to the operators if the system malfunctioned further. The room was a cacophony of panicked shouting, conflicting orders, and the shrill, insistent wail of the emergency alarm. In the midst of the escalating chaos, a pocket of absolute calm moved through the room. Maya stepped forward. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't announce her intentions. She simply moved with a liquid efficiency that was both jarring and hypnotic. "Hey, civilian, get back here," Davies yelled, reaching out to grab her arm. But his hand closed on empty air. She was already past him, her body flowing through the throng of confused agents like water, finding the path of least resistance. She vaulted the low barrier separating the observation area from the control room floor, landing with a whisper-soft thud that spoke of years of practice. Her movements were not athletic in the way of a gymnast. They were economical, a brutalist ballet where every motion had a purpose and no energy was wasted. She reached the now vacant control panel, her eyes scanning the complex array of screens and switches. Her hands, which had so meticulously cleaned her camera moments before, now moved with the same preternatural calm. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, not with the frantic pecking of a guess, but with the confident rhythm of muscle memory. A series of command lines appeared on the main screen, code scrolling too fast for anyone to read. She was slicing through layers of security protocols, overriding the lockdown sequence with an intimacy that suggested she wasn't hacking the system, but speaking to it in its native language. Then, she stopped. She looked through the glass at the kill house, her gaze fixed on a single ventilation duct near the ceiling. She hit one final key. A deafening silence fell as the alarms cut out. A heavy metallic click echoed as every lock in the kill house disengaged simultaneously. The HRT team, stunned, looked up at the control booth. Davies stood with his mouth hanging open, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. Maya simply stepped back from the console, her work done, her posture returning to that same unassuming stillness, as if she had done nothing more remarkable than tying her shoe. A heavy silence descended upon the control room, broken only by the distant, relieved chatter of the HRT team over the radio. Every eye, from the junior trainees to the seasoned supervisors, was fixed on the small girl in the gray hoodie who now stood quietly by the console, looking for all the world like she was waiting for a bus. Agent Davies stared, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. The system she had bypassed in under 30 seconds was a proprietary FBI tactical network, a labyrinth of code that took even their best technicians a full day to reboot. She hadn't just overridden it. She had commanded it. A side door to the observation deck opened with a pneumatic hiss, and Admiral Callahan stepped into the room. His presence was a physical force, instantly commanding the attention and deference of every agent present. He was flanked by two aides who remained by the door, their faces grim. The Admiral's eyes, however, were not on his agents, nor on the now stable control panel. They were fixed solely on Maya. He walked past the dumbfounded Agent Davies as if he were a piece of furniture, his path direct and unwavering until he stood before the girl. He didn't speak at first. His gaze was intense, a mixture of profound recognition and a deep, ancient sorrow. He looked at her still face. Then his eyes dropped to the braided blue cord on her wrist. He reached out, not to touch it, but his fingers hovered just above the fabric, a gesture of immense reverence. Then, He turned to one of his aides, his voice low but carrying the unmistakable weight of command. "Get me the file," he ordered, his voice like stones grinding together. Project Aegis. Subject call sign. Valkyrie. The name hung in the air, alien and mythic. To the FBI agents, it meant nothing. But it was spoken with a finality that chilled them to the bone. The aide, his face pale, scrambled to a secure terminal, his fingers flying across the keyboard, accessing a level of clearance far beyond anything the FBI agents in the room possessed. Davies, his face ashen, finally understood. He had not just made a mistake. He had committed a sacrilege. The secure terminal beeped, and a file appeared on the main monitor that overlooked the control room. It was stark white, with heavy black redaction blocks covering most of the text. At the top, in bold, sans-serif font, were the words, Project Aegis, eyes only. Admiral Callahan took a deep breath, turning to face the assembled agents, his expression one of cold, righteous fury. He was no longer just a visiting dignitary. He was an arbiter, there to deliver a judgment that would be seared into the memory of everyone present. He began to read from the screen, his voice a measured, staccato rhythm, each word a hammer blow against the anvil of Agent Davies' ignorance. Name, Commander Anya Sharma. Call sign, Valkyrie. A murmur went through the room. Commander, Navy. Unit, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, the official name for SEAL Team 6. The air grew thin. Service record. Callahan paused, scanning the screen. Redacted. Redacted. Operation Phantom Fury. Redacted. Operation Neptune Spear. Redacted. Mission details classified above top secret. The list of medals came next, a litany of valor that was almost unbelievable. Awarded, the Navy Cross with Valor Device. For extreme heroism under fire, single-handedly defending a compromised position for 72 hours, another line. The Silver Star. For gallantry in action, rescuing 3 wounded teammates from a disabled vehicle while under direct enemy fire, the list went on. Bronze Stars. A Purple Heart with 3 clusters, indicating she had been wounded in action 4 separate times. Then came the final, gut-wrenching reveal. Callahan's voice softened, but lost none of its power. Commander Sharma was the sole architect of this facility's primary tactical software. The system you call the Dynamic Engagement Protocol? Her team called it the Valkyrie Protocol. She designed it. She stress-tested it. She knew its every line of code because she wrote them. He let that sink in, the enormity of it washing over the room. He then turned his gaze back to Maya, his expression now one of deep, paternal respect. "Your mother was not a Navy SEAL," he said, his voice clear for all to hear. "She was the one they sent when the SEALs were in trouble. She was a legend." He faced the girl fully, drew himself to his full height, and rendered a slow, perfect salute. It was not a salute to a child. It was a salute to a legacy, a ghost, and the daughter who carried her fire. "My deepest apologies for my agent's profound ignorance, Miss Sharma." The story of what happened in the Quantico control room did not just spread, it detonated. It moved through the hushed corridors of the Hoover Building, across encrypted networks to forward operating bases in undisclosed locations, and through the quiet, tight-knit community of the special operations world. The incident at the Future Agents Day became an instant legend, a cautionary tale whispered from seasoned instructors to new recruits. It was a story about the danger of assumptions, the folly of arrogance, and the quiet, lethal competence that can hide in the plainest of packages. Agent Davies became the central figure of the narrative's lesson, a living symbol of institutional hubris. He wasn't fired. Admiral Callahan, in his wisdom, knew that a firing would be an ending. What Davies needed was a transformation. His career was effectively sidelined, but he was kept on, forced to confront the magnitude of his mistake every single day. The change in him was palpable. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a quiet, haunted humility. The smug smirk was replaced by a look of constant, weary reflection. One afternoon, weeks later, he found Maya sitting alone in the facility's small library, reading a well-worn book on tactical architecture. He approached her not as an authority figure, but as a supplicant. He stood before her, his hands clasped awkwardly, and offered the only thing he had left. "I was wrong," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "There's no excuse. What I said, what I did, was unforgivable. I am truly, deeply sorry. Maya looked up from her book, her gaze as steady and unreadable as ever. She held his eyes for a long moment, then gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was not forgiveness, not yet. It was an acknowledgement, an acceptance of his surrender. For her, vindication was never about his debasement. It was about the truth, and the truth had been unequivocally served. Her quiet nod was all the confirmation he would ever receive, and he knew he had to earn the rest. The legend of Anya, Valkyrie, Sharma, and her daughter solidified into institutional bedrock. The Dynamic Engagement Protocol was officially and publicly renamed the Sharma Protocol, a permanent tribute etched into the FBI's operational history. A small, simple plaque was mounted beside the control room door, bearing her name, her call sign, and a single, stark sentence. Competence is the only authority, but the most powerful monument was a living one. Maya, instead of retreating from the world that had both scorned and revered her in the space of an afternoon, chose to engage with it on her own terms. She accepted an invitation to become a youth consultant for the Future Agents program. She never spoke of combat or war. She never mentioned her mother's medals or her classified missions. Instead, she taught the other students what her mother had taught her: the discipline of focus, the power of observation, the art of finding stillness in the middle of a storm. She would sit with them, showing them how to tie the complex knots used in climbing and rescue operations, explaining how each knot had a purpose, a strength, a breaking point. She taught them to see the world not as a series of threats, but as a series of problems to be solved with calm, methodical precision. In the main briefing room at Quantico, where photos of the FBI's 10 most wanted criminals and decorated directors lined the walls, a new picture appeared. It was not a formal military portrait of Commander Sharma. It was a small, candid snapshot, pinned quietly to a corner of the main bulletin board. It showed a woman in dusty fatigues, her hair tied back, sitting on the tailgate of a Humvee somewhere far away. She was smiling, a faint, gentle curve of her lips, but her eyes held the same unnerving stillness, the same deep, analytical calm as her daughter's. The legend was cemented not in the dramatic confrontation, but in the quiet, enduring evidence of a legacy that was still very much alive. A year passed. Another Future Agents Day was underway at Quantico. A new crop of eager, nervous students were gathered in the same cavernous training hall. A different special agent, young and brimming with the same cocksure energy that had once defined Agent Davies, was leading the tour. He singled out a quiet boy in the back, a kid who was sketching in a notebook instead of hanging on the agent's every word. "Hey, you in the back," the agent called out, his voice sharp with annoyance. "Think you're too smart for this? Planning on drawing your way into the bureau?" The boy flushed, shrinking under the sudden, unwanted attention. Before the agent could continue his public shaming, a hand gently fell on his shoulder. He turned to find Agent Davies standing behind him. The man looked older than his years, his face etched with a permanent humility. "A word, Agent," Davies said, his voice low and devoid of rank or authority, yet carrying an immense weight. He led the younger agent a few feet away, out of earshot of the students. He didn't reprimand him. He didn't threaten him. He simply told him a story. He spoke of a girl in a gray hoodie, of an arrogant agent who judged a book by its cover, and of a legendary ghost named Valkyrie. He told him about the day the entire system failed and how it was saved not by the professionals in tactical gear, but by the quiet girl who had been publicly mocked moments before. "Look closer," Davies finished, his voice soft but firm. "Look at what they do, not who you think they are. Respect is earned in silence." "Assume nothing," the young agent stared at Davies, then back at the quiet boy sketching in his notebook, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. The institutional culture, that massive, immovable beast, had begun to shift, corrected by the echo of a single moment of quiet competence. Across the room, observing from the shadows, was Maya Sharma. Now a cadet consultant, she watched the exchange with her mother's calm, analytical gaze. Her presence was a silent, living reminder of the day that truth had silenced assumption. True legacy is not what is carved in stone or printed on a citation. It is not found in the thunder of a 1,000-gun salute or the hushed reverence of a state funeral. Those are monuments to an ending, echoes of a life already lived. A real legacy, the kind that breathes and grows and changes the world long after its originator is gone, is a quieter thing. It is the discipline passed from a mother to a daughter, a silent inheritance of focus and resolve. It is the moral clarity that can be felt in a person's stillness, the unnerving calm that tells you they have walked through fire and are no longer afraid of the heat. Anya Sharma's legacy was not just in the classified files that chronicled her heroism or the advanced protocol that bore her name. It was in the way her daughter moved, the way she thought, the way she could command a crisis without raising her voice. It was in the fundamental shift of a powerful institution, a lesson in humility delivered so profoundly that it became part of the training for the next generation. It was in the actions of a humbled Agent Davies, who now saw it as his duty to protect the quiet ones, to ensure that competence was always given a chance to speak for itself. The greatest strength is rarely the loudest. It is not the roar of the storm that shakes the world, but the quiet, unyielding mountain that endures it, that stands silent and steadfast long after the wind and the rain have passed. It is the competence that requires no applause, the honor that needs no validation, and the quiet professional who proves, through action alone, that true worth is not proclaimed, but demonstrated. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud assumption and where silent discipline defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.